Hi, Ethan.
Sorry, Jen, you were in my headphones. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I've been checking my settings to make sure that I didn't have you muted.
No, it's coming through my headphones. They were just laying on my desk.
This meeting starts at 3, right?
3:30.
Oh, well, I'm just going to stay on mute then.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm probably going to go grab a cup of coffee.
All right, see you in a little bit.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Really good. How about you?
Doing good. You know, it's Wednesday and day is supposedly almost over, so
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Did you guys get the world's problems figured out?
Oh, Good afternoon. Oh,
Hello, hello.
how are you, sir?
I'm good today.
Good
Good.
afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
We're gonna have a quorum today, you think?
We should.
Anybody respond that they're not gonna be here?
Not that I'm aware of. Mila, did you receive anything?
Let me see. Brian Ortego will not be joining. And that's the only one I have.
Good. Well, not good, but good, we have a quorum. Hello, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Jen's here, glad to see it. Stuart appears to be here by voice.
I am here, in fact.
Good. And Tracy just checked in. Hello, Tracy. Can't hear you.
You're muted, Tracy.
You're on mute, Tracy. She's not feeling talkative today.
I think she's on another call.
I think she's on a call on her headphones
I
and
got you.
she's here to start and she'll be in a second.
I'll wait another couple minutes anyway. I know Philip is supposed to show up, so give us a minute. Andrea, are you guys all ready to go on your side?
Yes, sir, I believe we are.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a quorum and I guess Philip's the only one that we're waiting on. He'll probably buzz in here in a minute. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's October 14th. It is, according to my clock, 3:31 p.m. and I'm officially calling the meeting to order. Okay. All right, so we're going to have a pretty potentially long meeting again today. I really hope everybody will stay and stick around. I know it went really long last time. There's Philip. Hi, Philip.
Hey, guys, sorry.
It's all right. So what I just opened up the meeting. So what I'm saying is we may have another long meeting to discuss. I hope not. We'll try to keep this thing moving as quickly as possible. But this is the whole purpose of this committee is to really put serious thought and a lot of discussion into these items, because some of these may seem like boring and minor issues, but they really are fairly big issues to the development community. And so we really ask that everybody take time to, I know you've read all this and considered all this, but we ask that you really take a really deep thought into these issues, and no comment is a bad comment. I mean, so I really would love to have a lot of input, and even more than me, I know the city staff would really love to have it as well, because they rely on us for this purpose. So just having said that, I just want to make sure that we're not just crickets every time they ask questions. I mean, don't be afraid to ask questions. So having said that, let's open up the meeting for the legislative regular agenda. Andrea, do you have anything to say in terms of the regular session, item A or B? Do we need to go over that?
Sure. Well, on item A, just a very quick reminder that, to please mute your microphone when you're not talking. That way we don't have any echo or any background noise. But just remind yourself to unmute when you are ready to be able to present any sort of comments. It looks like I don't see that we have any members from the public that have joined our meeting. However, if so, we'll certainly make sure that we're able to give them ample time to have any comments if they do have some comments, or at least they can do that by just raising their hand or just adding their comment to the chat box. But other than that, really just I think we're good, sir.
All right, well, that's good.
One thing that I do want to ask everybody is that if for whatever reason you happen to fall, like, you have internet problems or you get disconnected on the call for some reason, please reach out to us. If you want, please actually give me a call on my phone at 512-931-7686. So that way, if you do fall off and you're having any issues, just give me a call, let me know. Because I mean, I think we should be good for today's meeting, but we just want to make sure that we maintain quorum and able to have everybody that we need to on the list.
You say
Give us that
931?
number one more time.
Yeah.
Sure. It is 512-931-7686. And Tracy, I see that you're calling me. Just give me 1 second. Hi. Okay, so it looks like Tracy is having issues with her microphone, and she's also having issues joining in through the dialing number. So I have her on speakerphone right now. She's able to hear us okay, but hopefully she's also going to be trying joining in through a separate computer, separate machine, and hopefully be able to participate in the conversation through the computer. But in the meantime, I have her on the phone. Tracy, can you hear us okay? Can you guys hear that?
I heard her.
Okay, perfect. All right.
All right, so having said that, let's move on to item C, the legislative regular agenda. Let's go ahead and start this. First of all, we got to go over the minutes. So consideration possible action to approve the minutes of the August 12th, 2020 and September 9th, 2020 regular meeting of the UDC Advisory Committee. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? And I will entertain motions.
I move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Jen
I'll second.
and a second by Brian. All in favor? Aye. Stuart, are you on?
Sorry, yes, I'm aye.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't hear Tracy, but maybe maybe.
Tracy, did you vote aye to approve the minutes?
I see you're trying to peek in there. Just put your thumb in front of the camera. There you go. That's what I want to see. All right, so I think it's unanimous. It wasn't pretty, but we're unanimous. So anyway, all right, so let's move on. Item D, discussion and possible direction on the proposed amendments to tree preservation landscaping standards of the UDC, specifically as it relates to tree preservation, removal and mitigation, and street yard gateway and parking landscape standards. Take it away, what, Steve or everybody?
Actually,
Can I say one thing real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
My memory serves me correct. We did not approve the minutes from the previous meeting at the last meeting. Do we need to do both sets of minutes?
Actually, well, if I called out both and we voted once, maybe we should vote for each one specifically. I guess I probably did that wrong. We had one vote and I was assuming that covered both of those sets. ADQ, should we vote on?
I mean, if the motion included approval of the minutes for both sets, then we don't need to take further action. And Mirna, did we get the motion like we needed it?
Jen made the motion.
Yeah, that's what I meant, was to approve them both.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so then we're covered. Thank you. Good point, Jen. Sorry I missed that. Okay.
All right, so I will actually get us started on this presentation, just kind of like how we did the at the last meeting. I'll go ahead and introduce us, and then pass it on to both Ethan and Steve, who are going to be really going over the more specific materials for it. And so, Ethan, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. Here we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so so today, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. But today, what we have, the purpose for today's meeting is to really continue the discussion that we started at the last meeting, and be able to wrap up the conversation on the issues and the possible solutions and directions to be able to address revisions to the UDC related to tree preservation, removal, and mitigation, and then begin the conversation regarding street yard gateways and parking. And so we have broken up the agenda for today's meeting into 4 parts. So definitely bear with us. As PJ mentioned earlier at the meeting, we anticipate that this meeting will be another long one. But we are all here in it together. So just bear with us for a little bit as we go through all of the items. And so we're going to start off the meeting by recapping what went on at the last meeting in September, kind of like what we discussed, reminding ourselves of the amendment review process that we established for this particular topic, as well as reviewing that list of issues that were presented, not just by members of the public and staff, but by you as well, where we identified all the items that we need to make sure that we're able to address. Then the next part is going to be, as I mentioned, wrapping up the discussion with the tree preservation issues. We want to be able to validate those solutions that we had identified that we already obtained clear direction from you at the last meeting, but then also be able to discuss the issues of those specific items, which were 5 remaining items, where you had asked us to come back to you with some additional information or with some options for us to be able to discuss, and hopefully narrow down the solution for those items, and then be able to validate those. And then we'll go into, as mentioned, street yard gateways and parking, discuss the issues for those items and possible solutions, and then go into the 4th part, which relates to next steps. So just as a reminder, through this review process, we started off by having the items that were approved by the city council based on items that, had been presented by the public and staff, that, things that we needed to be able to address. And then now we're in this stage where we are reviewing the specific topics with you to be able to address whether it's ambiguities and the conflicts that we have identified in the UDC that need to be amended and revised so that we can prepare draft amendments and then be able to go out to the public, obtain comments and feedback, and then ultimately, make an amendment that we can recommend to PNC and City Council. And so at the last meeting, and actually at the last couple of meetings, we had gone over how we broke down the tree preservation discussion. And because, we were looking at chapter 8, which is all of our entire tree preservation and landscaping standards, and being such a big topic, we broke it down into 3 different focus areas. And so we said that one focus area was going to be all about tree preservation, removal, and mitigation. One focus area was going to be all about street yards, gateways, and parking landscaping standards. And then the last focus area was going to be all about screening, buffering, and water conservation. And so this way we were able to break it down so that we can address the 3 different issues, or 3 different areas, I should say. And then for each of these areas, here we go. We went back, we looked at what are some of the specific items that staff had identified, what are some of the specific items that the public had identified, and we asked you as well to be able to give us some ideas about specific issues that we needed to be able to address for each of those bucket areas. And so under tree preservation, removal, and mitigation, as you may recall, we went over the entire list. Anything related to how we measure the trunks, to how we define trees, to in regards to, what are some of the documents and information that we require for tree preservation specifically, what are some of the tree mitigation options for you. So we all identified 12 specific issues that were all related to tree preservation, removal, and mitigation. And that's, kind of what we discussed at the last meeting. And then we also identified issues for street yard gateways and parkings. And specifically related to these items, we grouped in there the use of artificial turf for single family residential, the street yard requirements, especially for large lots or for phased developments, the applicability of the gateway landscape requirements and how that relates to other landscaping requirements that we have in the code, the applicability of the landscape requirements for inventory lots that are related to auto related uses, and any conflicts that may exist between utilities and easements, signage, and then our landscaping requirements. And so we grouped those together, and that's, going to be one of the main focus areas for our discussion today. And then under screening, buffering, water conservation, we really only identified 2 specific issues, which were related to screening requirements for alternative waste containers, and then really looking at our non-residential landscaping requirements with regards to the city's water conservation efforts and the types of landscaping that we may be requiring, recommending, and how that relates to water usage. And so at the last meeting, as you may recall, after we looked at this, we asked ourselves a question: is this everything? Did we get it all? or are there any specific issue items that we had missed, that perhaps we had missed? And none were identified at the last meeting. So this is I wanted to bring it up, the question again, and ask this group to see, are there any, specifically as it relates to these two focus areas? I think we've kind of like, covered tree preservation very thoroughly, but on the street yard gateways and parkings and on the screening, buffering, and water conservation, I kind of wanted to give us the opportunity again to say, hey, yes, these are all the issues that we need to work on, or are they actually anything else specific to these items that perhaps we have forgotten that we need to make sure, oh, but there's this else that we need to be able to address. So I kind of want to pause us here and ask that question one more time to make sure that we finalize that list and we know we can work on these and not, bring anything else in the future.
So I have, and this may be covered, but just to make sure, because it's not obvious to me, but the issue that the member from the public that brought up about being able to use HOA trees in yards and credit those towards the tree requirements, is that in this list?
So that is one of the options that we discussed under the tree mitigation options for tree preservation.
Okay, is that in, so that's in one of these TP 08, 9, 10?
Yes, so it's actually encompassed in TP 11, where we talk about consider additional options for tree mitigation. It's included in that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Anything else? All right. So, we have again, we have our list finalized. These are the topics and specific issues that we're going to be working on. So with that, I'll go ahead and transition us to the next part of the presentation, which is where we're going to continue the discussion on the tree preservation issues that we started talking from our September meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ethan.
All right. So at our September meeting, we talked about those 12 specific tree-related issues that Andrea mentioned a while ago. And we asked y'all for your feedback on the issues, your ideas for potential solutions, your review of our proposed solutions. So what we have prepared for you today is a proposed set of terms on which we can base those UDC revisions on. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see the discussion that Andrea captured last week, your discussion points, any follow-up that was needed, and the direction you gave to us. And on the right side of your screen, what you'll see is the slide that we talked over last time with that information. And then as I change slides, you'll see where I've outlined what the current terms are and what the proposed terms are based on your discussion. So at the last meeting, there were 7 issues that y'all were, as we discussed, seemed to come with clear direction and easier solutions. And there were 5 issues where you asked us to come back with either more information, do a little bit more research for you, or to bring you back some options to consider. So today I'd like to discuss those first 7 that we got clear direction on from you last time, and just make sure that we got it right. Then I'd like to work through those last 5, discuss the options that we've prepared for you in that research, and then figure out if any of the options we've presented to you are favorable, or if or if we got the solution that we can propose correct. So the first item we talked about last week was about how to measure a multi-trunk tree. Currently, our UDC requires that any project provide a tree survey, and that tree survey needs to show any tree, no matter the species, that is 12 inches or greater. We also currently have, then that tree includes any species, whether it's a shade tree, an ornamental tree, or even one of our excluded species. In your discussion last week, we discussed how cumbersome it can be to go out there and measure all sorts of different kinds of trees, especially those trees that aren't going to be useful to review or your understanding of the site or your project. So based on your feedback from last week, we propose to add language to the tree survey requirement that would require to measure all trees 12 inches in diameter, that same threshold we have now, except for those 5 excluded species that we have specifically adopted in the UDC. We would also prepare some educational materials that could be included in the development manual with your application checklist and your forms that could serve as a quick, easy guide for how to measure different types of trees, whether they're multi-trunked, whether they're growing at a 45-degree angle, whether they split off in a Y halfway up. And then we also propose to codify that equation we use for calculating the diameter of a multi-trunk tree by taking 100% of the diameter of the largest tree and then adding that, of the largest trunk, and then adding that to 50% of the diameter of each smallest trunk. So based on the discussion from last week and what you were expecting, do you feel like we got these terms correct?
I have a question, and where it says ash juniper is an excluded tree, can we just say all cedars? Isn't that the point? I don't want to get into the types because I know there's more than one type of cedar. I think all cedars is what we're going for, correct? I mean, you may have someone that gets hung up on a technicality and like, well, it's not an ash juniper, it's a, whatever.
I think that was the intention.
So instead of putting ash juniper, maybe just put all cedar or something, or all juniper. I don't know what, if we use a technical, the Latin term, or we use the American term, but whatever,
Yeah, we can make that change.
I'm just trying to avoid controversy because I can see down the road somebody arguing over whether or not, this was a cedar tree or this was a juniper, or which variety of which.
Yeah.
But, all right.
Yes. My question or comment, I guess it falls under number 3 where it says codify the terms. I think one point we talked a little bit about was saying in any multi-trunk tree, let's make sure at least the biggest trunk is a certain size. Might be a good way to look at it. So for instance, if you had a multi-trunk tree and none of them were over 8 inches, none of the trunks were over 8 inches, it doesn't qualify, something like that. I'm not sure if that's the right number, but I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we did. We have thought about that option before. And what we figured out was that it would require us to kind of create a sliding scale. It would almost kind of remind me of, what teachers used to use to figure your grade based on how many questions there were. You'd have to have a scale based on, the number of trunks the tree had, and then the size, the largest trunk, to figure out what ratios you would have to meet there.
And is that what you're talking about in the codify part, number 3? Would that happen in there?
No, I apologize. That point's not very clear. When we measure multi-trunk tree, the diameter is figured as 100% of the diameter of the largest tree, plus 50% of the diameter of each of the smaller trunks. And currently in our UDC, that is not anywhere to be found. That is adopted in our development manual on our tree survey templates and tree schedule templates. But that actually practice of measuring the trees in those ways is not in the UDC. So we're just be taking it from our technical manual and putting it in the code.
Gotcha.
But
Okay, so then I guess my question is, where do we address the sliding scale that you're talking about? Does that fall under number 2?
So based on our discussion from last week, we understood that kind of sliding scale option wasn't what y'all were looking for. And so that we went this way to just exclude the excluded species from the survey requirement.
So, okay.
So did we get that right, or do we?
I think
Or
maybe,
is that something that's missing here in a direction that we want to be able to move
yeah,
forward?
I'm just thinking back to the crepe myrtle. I don't know why crepe myrtles are there's a lot of them out there. And that's a typical tree that might have multiple branches.
Mhm.
And I think what Philip's saying is, so we come across a crepe myrtle that's got 7 5-inch branches.
Now
And
we
do count
do
that?
discuss, now later on in TP5, we do discuss ornamental trees specifically. So would it be helpful if we work through the presentation to TP5 and then came back to this one?
Sure.
Sure.
The second item we considered last week was about adding definitions for a few terms related to trees in our UDC. So currently our UDC has a definition for what a tree is, but doesn't have a definition for what a trunk, a branch, or a stem is. Last week we talked through the 3 definitions on the screen, and some good points were made about, well, do we really need a definition for what a branch is or stem is? Those aren't really terms addressed in the UDC. Another good point was also brought up based on the fact that each of these definitions was kind of using the same words to define itself. So we define stem, and then we define a branch as a certain kind of stem, and then a primary branch is a certain kind of branch, and then a trunk is another kind of stem. In revisiting our discussion from last week, we kind of scrapped the idea to define what a branch and a stem is and just focus on using the definition of a trunk. So the UDC does not actually have a definition of a trunk here already, but the UDC does adopt the second edition of, use the wrong edition on the slide, of Random House's dictionary to define any word that's not defined in the UDC. So what we're proposing here is to take that definition from the Random House dictionary and use it and directly adopt it into the UDC as a definition from a trunk. And what I think this definition does very clearly is just kind of separate which part of the tree is actually the trunk. Is it, they say it's the main stem of a tree as distinct from the branches and roots. So when you get up into the canopy, that's not the trunk. And when you get down below the ground, that's not the trunk. It's kind of anything supporting what's in the air. Do y'all see this is a good definition? Is this something useful as you're trying to figure out what's going on with the tree?
I like how it keeps it simple, which I think has some value. Other than the multi-trunk definition and how that plays into this, that'd be the only caveat that I would see needs clarification.
Okay.
Maybe not here, but maybe that happens in the multi-trunk stuff.
I like the standard definition that may help to define a branch and a root if we're trying to distinguish that from trunk. We got the trunk definition, and to just clarify things, we might want to say what we think the branch is and the root. Using the same methodology.
Great.
Could y'all hear Brian okay on that? Brian, I think your microphone, or you're too far from it or something. It was really, really garbled.
Do you hear me any better now?
A little bit.
Brian, I was getting that you could see some value in defining what a branch and a stem is based on a similar style of definition.
Yes. I like your method of just going to a dictionary definition. And in the definition, it says distinct from branches and roots. But if we don't say what branches and roots are, then we might, come back on an issue.
Okay.
That sounded better.
All right. Any other comments on this slide? Concerns? Awesome. The third item we considered last week was about adding a definition into the UDC for the terms hardwood and softwood. And in our discussion last week, we came to the conclusion that the terms hardwood and softwood aren't necessarily used in the UDC to define what a heritage tree or a protected tree is. There are more terms used in everyday conversation instead of specifically naming the specific types of species that fall into each of those categories. Heritage trees are currently listed as only varieties of oak, bald cypress, American elm, cedar elm, pecan, walnut, Texas ash, and southern magnolia. And as we discussed last week, it's not going to be necessary to define the term hardwood and softwood. We don't really need to add or subtract from that list of heritage trees now. And instead of creating a specific list like we have for heritage trees for protected trees, simply continue to allow protected trees to be of any tree species except for those excluded species that we mentioned earlier. This one allows you to not limit yourself to what can be counted for credit. You may find some random tree out there in the world or on an existing site that's being redeveloped that might not be on that specific list. And you want to be able to get credit for that, and you want to be able to get credit for your ornamental trees that are of protected tree size in your landscape calculations. So did we get this right? Is this what y'all expected?
I like this.
Yeah, I like it.
Nice.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, well, item number 4 was about that list of excluded trees, making sure that we exclude cedar. And so here on the slide, we have maintained our current list of excluded trees, but from our previous conversation, I think we can look into further defining what cedar is so that we capture all types of cedar. We feel like we got this one right?
I think so. I think that covers pretty much the majority of them. Is that right, Philip? Can you think of any other excludable trees?
I think these are the main ones. I think that it's been pretty clear and simple, and I don't think there's any others that just stand out.
Are there, kind of like what I said about cedars, are Chinese tallow, are there varieties of that as well? Or I'm not an arborist, so I don't know these questions, but just curious. I'm trying to make it as broad so we don't get real specific, but maybe that's good.
Yeah, I think this is pretty complete without a bunch of additional research.
All right. Well, I'm okay with it. Everybody else?
Yeah.
Great. The next item that we discussed last week that doesn't need a whole lot of discussion or research was really about the difference between a tree survey and a tree inventory. So currently, our UDC requires that every project come with a tree survey, and that tree survey will include basic information such as the tree's location, the tree's size, and species. It does not include specific information about the tree itself, like its health. Is it diseased? Is it dying on its way out? Or is this even a tree